In a very brief summary, an extraordinary career from co-founding Games Workshop and the foresight to launch Dungeons & Dragons into Europe, creating Final Fantasy. Fighting Fantasy, I beg your pardon. If you had, that would make you much richer. Fighting Fantasy. Launching Tomb Raider. Writing the next-gen skills review. About to open the Livingstone School, free school in Hammersmith. That's absolutely fantastic. And very much our voice in government and many other sectors. I really felt guilty for not thanking you also, or giving you huge credit for the tax breaks that evolved yesterday. So it'll be a pleasure to hear from you, and thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Thank you very much, Charles. Always a pleasure to be at GameHorizon. I think this is my 7th time. It's a fantastic conference, and it's just great to be always being in the games industry. I'm just a young kid having fun myself, and really enjoyed being part of this fantastic, extraordinary industry in which we find ourselves. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit, not too much about what I've done over the 40 years, which has led me to my current project, which is applying to open a free school. I'm still very much involved in games creation. Whilst I've cut the umbilical cord with Eidos, I still find myself deeply involved with games production, chair a number of companies, Playdemic, Bidoki, Playmob, and advise many others. But let me talk about games, why I think games are such a wonderful thing that goes beyond just the games industry itself. When we come into this world, we interact with it. It's a natural form of play and a natural form of learning. When we grow up, we still enjoy that puzzle and problem solving. And when we apply rules to games, to puzzles and interactive experience, they become games. And as I've said many times before, I joined the game industry not long after chess was invented in 643. I started a company called Games Workshop. The handsome guy on the far side, that's me, with 2 school friends, Steve Jackson and John Peake. And we launched Dungeons & Dragons. We got the exclusive rights in 1975. We ordered 6 copies. On the back of that huge order, we got an exclusive distribution agreement for Europe. We went over to the States. We met the creators, signed up all the fledgling games companies. And that's me holding the box. Fritz Lieber, science fiction author. Gary Gygax, Professor Bark, inventor of Petal Throne. Rob Kuntz, one of the creators of many of the rule books of D&D, and Steve Jackson looking a bit grumpy at the front. The worrying thing about this photo, as I've said before, is that the first 3 guys are all dead, and I'm kind of next in line, which is a bit of a worry. We also got to meet Miss Wisconsin in 1976, probably a friend of Mark Rains now, and came back and started selling D&D. Opened our very first Games Workshop in Hammersmith, and that's one of the reasons why I went to my school in Hammersmith. I'm still hoping to meet somebody who was in that queue. This was April 1978. Of course, Workshop has grown up massively since. If you go past it today, you'll see it's a Bosnia and Herzegovina, a community advice center. As I say, the game industry evolves. We wanted to take our role-playing industry, our passion of playing games, and saying how wonderful role-playing was as theatre of the mind, how D&D itself, although it didn't look much, really influenced very much of what we're involved with today, from World of Warcraft to every RPG component of games now is really down to D&D. And Steve and I, back in the early 80s, wanted to also do our own thing, and we came up with the interactive gamebook format, Fighting Fantasy. These are books in which the readers became the hero, and were very much dismissed at the time, even though it was interactive, it was getting kids reading who wouldn't normally read, it was empowering the reader to make the choices, it was a single-player role-playing experience. They say today it was the gamification of literature, applying a set of rules to a branching narrative to create an interactive book. And for Harry, who was talking about bringing Japanese content to the UK, this is what the Japanese did to our books. This is Death Trap Dungeon in Japan. Thank you very much. I have to make your own decisions about that. The word camel has been used a few times in this context. Not sure what they're talking about, frankly, but Fighting Fantasy was very much misunderstood back in the 80s. The Evangelical Alliance published an 8-page warning guide about them, saying that they were, because you're interacting with ghouls and demons, that you're going to be possessed by the devil. A worried housewife in deeper suburbia, having said, phoning the local radio station, said, having read one of our books, her son levitated. A vicar threatened to chain himself to the gates of Penguin Books. I'd like to thank them all for their amazing publicity, because Penguin themselves didn't do any marketing themselves, so thank you to each one of them. And even back then, people worried about game as being a threat to society. There was this magazine article, The Danger of Play, warning parents about the danger of kids getting really engaged with our books, as though that was a problem. And they sent a petition to the publishers about wanting them banned. I remember being on Saturday Superstore. It's a TV program back in the 80s. I was reviewing the top 10 books with John Craven from Newsround, and we were going through 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, and I was asked to comment on each one of those. And it came to 3, 2, 1, and I had all those positions. And the first question he asked me, he said, when are you going to write a proper book? And I'm thinking, hang on, kids are reading these books. Isn't that the idea, to get kids reading, to enjoy reading in the first place? Then maybe I'll get on to read a proper book like Shakespeare. But if you start them off with Shakespeare, chances are they're not going to read at all. So that was one thing that's been in my mind on this journey to open a free school. But history has never been kind to games. Even back in the 1800s, chess was derided by Scientific American. And of course, when it comes to video games, there's sort of apoplectic fit as the media goes into a frenzy about games, which should, in large part, be seen as a very positive thing. Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, a great British success story, $1 billion in revenue in just under a week. This is an extraordinary success. It's a marriage of art and science. It's a brilliant piece of art. Pastiche of American society, should be celebrated in all media. So if you look around, everybody is playing games on their mobile devices, tubes, buses, everyone's playing games. It's pervasive, and that's great. 1.7 trillion candies are now being crushed, and I would say that games are certainly very good for you. They're social, they're cultural. BAFTA celebrates the art form. They're motivational. They can be used for rehabilitation or for even burning off calories. Choice is certainly very powerful. It's very engaging. We all know in this room the power and the engagement you get from playing a game. You don't have to read rule books anymore. Everything's through trial and error to intuitive learning. Games like Angry Birds, you're solving problems and understanding a little bit about physics, about trial and error again, and this is a great way of learning. And we all know about the creative components of games like Minecraft, how kids love to build content, effectively digital Lego, and share it with their friends. So to me, game skills that you learn are life skills, even though we don't consider them in the media as being positive. All these things happen when you're playing a game, from problem solving to hand-eye coordination. These are all a good thing. Another thing that got me on this road to school was the fact so many children enjoyed playing games, but the education system that was provided in terms of ICT was anything but hands-on way of understanding technology. We are a very naturally creative country. Look at our fashion, our film, our music, our design, our architecture, and of course our games. And we're very good at high technology. So it's no surprise that we got off to a flying start in the games industry. Great blockbusters are being developed in this country. And today, there are hundreds of indie studios doing great things. If you're in this room, you're not on this slide. Sorry, I have no more space, but there are a lot more than that, of course. But of course, it could have been so much more if we'd had more computer programmers and artists and animators with the right skills for not just the games industry, but for all the creative and digital industries. So who are you going to call? Well, I winched Ed Vaizey, the culture minister, who's been a great supporter of the games industry over the years that he's been the minister. And he tasked Alex Hope and I to write a review called Next Gen. You can download it from NESTA if you wish. It's had over 30,000 downloads. And we realized during the process of our research that it wasn't just about games, it wasn't just about creativity, It wasn't about consumption of technology, it was about enabling creative digital content to be produced by everybody. So we looked at the whole talent pipeline from universities through to schools, and came to the conclusion that ICT, as was served in schools, was largely useless, a strange hybrid of office skills, learning Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, giving people the ability how to consume technology, but giving them no insight whatsoever how to create their own technology. We're effectively teaching kids how to read, but not how to write. So our main recommendation in NextGen was to put computer science on the school's national curriculum, because this was nothing new. Back in the 80s, the BBC Micro was a cornerstone of computing in schools, and in the homes, everybody had a Sinclair Spectrum, and they were making games and enjoying the creative part of technology, which was forbidden for them to do in schools. So was NextGen to become another dust collector, polite applause from the industry, but it had been commissioned by DCMS, where we had to make the impression on Department for Education. And when we approached them, the civil servants really didn't want to know. So, thanks to Yuki, who funded the NextGen Skills Coalition, led by Theo Blackwell, we set about getting an alliance with some pretty big hitters: Facebook, Google, Microsoft, GCHQ, the Learning Societies, sector skills councils. And we spoke with one voice to government. And through our partnership with Google, Eric Schmidt referenced NextGen in his McTaggart lecture in 2011, and saying that he was flabbergasted to learn that computer science isn't taught as standard in the UK schools. And of course, if Eric says it, it must be true. And the Prime Minister echoed his words a month later in Tech City, saying, yes, Eric's right, we must do more to get more programmers in this world. So, poker mouth as well. This led, of course, to Michael Gove's historic speech, not always the most popular person in town, but for this I think he should be congratulated that he finally agreed with the recommendations of NextGen, agreed to disapply the current ICT curriculum and replace it with a new curriculum called computing. And the clue is in the verb that it's making and doing, and it's an active hands-on curriculum, hopefully. So in English schools this September, primary schools and secondary schools, we're obliged to have computing on the school's curriculum, which should be a good thing. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, of course, that led the question, well, we really need a flagship school who are going to make this as part of their main ethos, to have computer science and digital creativity at the school. So that led me to think about education, my own education, what I was witnessing with my own children going through schools, and that's the only thing that interferes with my learning is my education, as Albert Einstein so brilliantly pointed out. A lot of education to me is kind of inside out. English, for example. To John Craven's point, he would rather have a start off with Shakespeare because that has rigor and academic sort of robustness. But so something like Fighting Fancy, which is seen as a game and somehow irreverent, is not the right way to approach education. So I think that's kind of the wrong way around. I remember Lord David Putnam saying that the only reason he got into films was because it was his love for comics. So you've got to do something in relevance to what kids actually enjoy and take it to them rather than us trying to do a top-down, so you must do this. So I'm thinking about English, and I thought about French, how you spend 15 years and still not being able to speak a word. I'm very good at telling you about Voltaire and Guy de Maupassant. I can conjugate verbs, and I can spell pretty good in French, can't speak a word of it. And then maths, quadratic equation. Hands up, who can do one? Some smart-ass programmers, of course. But for most of us, we look at this and think, what on earth is that? We might have been able to do it at school. So the point is, we learn the computational bit in class, rather than saying, let our devices do the computational number crunching. What I need to know is how, when, and why I need to use a quadratic equation. So again, for me, it's the wrong way around of education. So, again, another Albert Einstein quote, education, not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. Indeed. So with this in mind, I thought I have to really do something myself. So I've applied to open a free school. We had to submit a 100-page application. We've had our panel. I've partnered it with a guy called David Kramer, who has the worldwide roots to Rubik's Cube. He's also a maths teacher, and he shares the same vision. And what we want to do is to make kids, this is my day of school. This is the old way of school. This is the Victorian broadcast model, which was fine for the Victorian age, where he's transposed people out of the class, stick them in the factory. They all needed the same skills. Today, the world is not like that. So we need kids who are able to collaborate, to hack their knowledge, to have teachers more of a facilitator. We're learning alongside. There can't be an excuse not to teach computer science. Just take the brightest kid in the class, say, you lead the class, and we'll use all the world's resources beyond the classroom's walls and have fun whilst we're doing it, of course. And collaboration is not cheating. We're all in class, we're allowed to sit on our little isolated desk, not allowed to cheat by looking at everybody else, don't discuss somebody else, tested in silos. Yet all with the way that we work in the workplace is a collaboration. So why should we be tested in isolation when we should be creating portfolios and things together? Together we could do way more things than we can do as individuals. And let's do all the fun stuff we do outside of school into the school. Why can't we use our computers to make music? Why can't we use all the things that make us the people we are, that we enjoy, part of the learning experience? Because it's simply, to my mind, a hands-on, minds-on. And to Sam Smith yesterday, it's all about making and doing. He's learning by making and doing, and that's what we should be doing in the schools. He, age 10, has now got an app on the App Store, which is brilliant. So what I want to have in my school is students who are great communicators, great problem solvers. They're going to be taught on the basis of computer science, on creativity and collaboration, giving them life skills. And let's celebrate our differences. Education should be about diversity, not conformity. We shouldn't all be doing the same things. Together we can do great things. This cartoon summarizes it perfect for me. Of course, it's climbing the tree, the monkey wins. If tomorrow the question on the exam was who could pull down the tree, the elephant wins. It's a random test. So let's kind of marginalize testing. And let's not punish failure. You know, failure is just part of the learning process. It's success, work in progress. And let's embrace failure as a good thing. Remember, Angry Birds was Rovio's 52nd game, not their first game. Toby Young also got a free school in Hammersmith. My friend Toby. He wrote a scathing article about my ideas in The Spectator in January. And he said, forget games-based learning, make Latin compulsory, and cited Mark Zuckerberg, an example of that. What he forgot to say was Mark Zuckerberg also studied computer science at university, which might have had a greater bearing on his ability to produce Facebook. Toby wants more testing and more discipline in class. Of course he can do that. He's free to do what he wish. But I wish he wouldn't keep on pounding my proposition to death without knowing anything about games and what we do in our wonderful industry. He even went so far to publish a booklet recently, which you can buy on Amazon, called Prisoners of the Blob. I'm now an official prisoner of the blob, and together with Ken Robinson, he has been lambasting calling us romantics of the past. So please don't buy a copy. I'm privileged to be with Ken Robinson, one of the most watched people in YouTube history, 25 million views of his wonderful, wonderful lectures on education. The war of knowledge versus know-how, it's a phony war. Let's do both. Let's Google facts. Let's learn stuff by rote for literacy and numeracy. At the same time, let's just not concentrate on that rote learning. Let's make sure we know how. Nearly finished, promise. The great thing about the digital agenda, that is equal digital opportunities for all. The analog world is pretty much set up and controlled. Learning these digital making skills gives any disadvantaged person anywhere in the world the opportunity to become the next Mark Zuckerberg. As long as they have inquiring minds, problem solvers, self-learners, not afraid of failures, and good communicators, they have a chance to be that person and create wonderful content and help this great economy of ours and this great country we live in. So what can the game industry do? Look at that. Join in whether you're going. I'm being pushed off the stage now, but if you can, join the STEMnet's ambassadors team, talk about our industry, engage with the community, do game jams, do what you can, evangelize, and perhaps one day, perhaps not in my lifetime, we'll see a headline like this. Thank you.
Thank you.